I'm going to be taking a close look in this video at North Africa, starting with the city of Susa on the Tunisian coast, where a long-distance alignment enters the African continent from Valletta in Malta in the Mediterranean Sea, and I look at places on and near where the alignment makes its way across the Sahara Desert in North Africa to Mauritania on the western coast of North Africa, and follow it to where the alignment crosses the Cape Verde Islands in the central Atlantic Ocean. My name is Michelle Gibson. Most of the research in this video came from a 23-part series called Sacred Geometry, Ley Lines, and Places in Alignment that I did back in 2020, tracking a long-distance alignment of cities and places that started in San Francisco. So far from the original 2020 series, I have uploaded the Ancient Advanced Civilization in Southeast Asia from Manila in the Philippines to Dhaka in Bangladesh, the Ancient Advanced Civilization in Armenia, Anatolia, and the Aegean Sea, and the Ancient Advanced Civilization in the Mediterranean Sea from the Strait of Messina to Malta. From the process of tracking cities and places in several different alignments over the years, I have collected a variety of puzzle pieces about different places. These pieces of the puzzle bring a bigger picture into focus that is not immediately apparent on the surface from this type of geographically focused research. In the last video, I took a tour of the amazing city of Valletta, the capital of the island Republic of Malta. I looked around what is found in the Marshamsed Harbor, around the Grand Harbor, and within the city walls of Valletta. I am picking up the alignment in Susa, the capital of Tunisia's Susa Governorate, one of the 24 governorates of Tunisia, and located 87 miles or 140 kilometers south of the nation's capital of Tunis. Susa is considered one of the most beautiful cities in Tunisia and is located on the Gulf of Hammamet. Susa is a transportation hub. It is a port city where there are two lighthouses at opposite ends of the harbor entrance, just like at the harbor in Valletta, Malta, and at the port of Dover, England, in the English Channel. Susa is linked by the widest road in the country, the A1 motorway, a 153-mile or 247-kilometer-long highway that connects Tunis with Sfax, another port city in southern Tunisia, and conceived of as part of an international project called the Trans-Maghreb Highway. The Maghreb is another name for Northwest Africa, a region which we are told was referred to in English and European sources in the 16th through 19th centuries as the Barbary Coast. What we are also told about the Maghreb is that during the era of Al-Andalus in Moorish Spain between 711 AD and 1492 AD, the Maghreb's inhabitants, Muslim Berbers or Maghrebi, were known by the Europeans as Moors, and that's about as much as they will give up to us directly about this particular subject. Susa is also connected by railway to Tunis. What we are told is that the construction of the railway in Tunisia first began around 1872 under the ruler at the time, Bey Mohammed III al-Sadiq, to serve the capital city of Tunis, and then extended to Algeria, to Susa, and to places like Sfax on the coast, which was a phosphate port, and Hadra near the border with Algeria, where there was lead, phosphate, and ore mining. In taking a look at the history of Tunisia, I found that at the beginning of the 1800s, Tunisia was described as a quasi-autonomous province of the Ottoman Empire. At this time in its history, we are told that its trade increased dramatically with Europe in the 1800s, with the arrival of Western merchants wanting to establish business in the country. Then the Bey of Tunis from 1855 to 1859, Mohammed, was forced by the British and French to sign the 1857 Fundamental Pact, which increased freedoms for non-Tunisians. Here's another clue we are talking about Moors. Bey is one of the 5 noble titles of the Moors, the other 4 being Dey, El, Al, and Ali. Also in the Ottoman Empire, Bey was the title of a governor of a province. Then we are told in 1861 Tunisia enacted the first constitution in what was called the Arab world, but a move toward a modernizing republic was said to have been hampered by a poor economy and political unrest. we are starting to see the use of the word Arab replacing that of Moor. Contained within the 1861 Constitution of Tunisia, we find that it was also the first state to establish Islam as its religion. The world would be in a much better place if we were talking about Moorish Islam, which is about reconnecting with our higher selves and raising our level of consciousness into higher consciousness. I, self-law, am master. I think this marked the beginning of turning the original Islam into the mechanism for creating a new form of fundamentalist Islam, where it was conceptually altered in order to lead us to what we see now as radical Islam and its destructive role in today's world. Regardless of the new constitution, when the Tunisian government couldn't manage the loans made by foreigners to the government, it declared bankruptcy in 1869. Then Britain and France cooperated between 1871 and 1878 to prevent Italy from acquiring Tunisia as a colony having investment, and subsequently Britain supported the French interest in Tunisia in exchange for dominion over Cyprus. Using the pretext of a Tunisian invasion into Algeria, the French invaded Tunisia in 1881 with an army of 36,000, which quickly advanced to Tunis, entering by way of places like Susa on the coast, and subsequently occupying Tunis. Then the French forced the new Bey, Mohammed III as-Sadiq, to make terms in the form of the 1881 Treaty of Bordeaux, which gave France control of Tunisian governance and making it a de facto French protectorate. The French progressively assumed more of the important administrative positions, and by 1884 they supervised all Tunisian government bureaus dealing with finance, post, education, telegraph, public works, and agriculture. French settlements were encouraged, with the number of French settlers said to have grown from 34,000 in 1906 to 144,000 in 1945, and the French administration weakened the local tribes in rural areas. This was said to depict an urban map of Tunis between 1890 and 1914. Then on March 20th of 1956, Tunisia achieved its independence from France with the establishment of a constitutional monarchy, with the last Bey of Tunis, Mohammed VIII Al-Amin Bey, as the King of Tunisia. This state of affairs didn't last long at all, as the Prime Minister, Habib Bourguiba, abolished the monarchy the following year, in 1957, and proclaimed the Republic of Tunisia the same year, and served as its president for the next 31 years. At the same time the constitutional monarchy of Tunisia was abolished, the Beylik of Tunis was terminated as well, which had once been a largely autonomous Beylik of the Ottoman Empire. We are told that the Ottoman Empire was founded at the end of the 13th century in northwestern Anatolia and existed as a vast empire and center of interactions between East and West until the end of World War I, when it was defeated as an ally of Germany and occupied by Allied forces. At this time, the Ottoman Empire was partitioned and lost its Middle East holdings, which were divided between the Allied forces. Among other things, it is interesting to note that the Carthaginian Empire was centered in Tunisia, and the powerful ancient city of Carthage was located in the vicinity of modern-day Tunis. This reconstruction of how Carthage was said to have looked is typical of depictions of it, and its protected harbor called a Kothon, which were said to have been generally found in the Phoenician world, and which looks remarkably like the former roundhouses of railroad lines everywhere, which have been totally removed from the modern world and no longer exist. Only remnants of roundhouses exist today, like Roundhouse Park in Toronto, located right next to, of all places interestingly enough, the CN Tower. Carthage was said to have been founded by Phoenician settlers from Tyre and Sidon in the modern-day country of Lebanon, and destroyed by Roman forces in 146 BC at the end of the Third Punic War. I find it very interesting that there's a narrow strip of the National Forest of Tunisia between the A1 motorway and the coast of Hammamet Bay, between Susa and the resort town of Hammamet to the north. Given the overall desertified nature of the place, we will see more on the desertification of the region as we move into northern Africa's Sahara Desert. There are many olive tree groves south of where the strip of the National Forest is located, adjacent to the Gulf of Hammamet Bay, in the vicinity of El Kantoui port, north of Susa proper. Olives are Tunisia's most important natural resource, and Susa is the center of the production and sale of olive oil in Tunisia. Interestingly, not too long ago in tracking an alignment, I encountered a similar strip of trees of Africa on the northeast coast of Somalia in Alula, the capital of the Bari region of Puntland on Cape Verde. Alula is situated next to a shallow lagoon lined by mangroves, a type of tree that grows in brackish water. Here's a picture of mangroves covering the coast of this area by Alula on Google Earth. Mangrove swamps are coastal wetlands characterized by these salt-loving trees and shrubs that are typically found in estuaries, where salt water meets fresh water. Estuaries have water that is salty, dirty, and unpleasant, and there are one or more rivers flowing into it, and a connection to the open sea. I have been speculating for a while now from my research that the Earth's estuaries are actually ruined and sunken land that once had the infrastructure of civilization on it. This region, even today, produces 1.5 million kilograms, or over 3.3 million pounds, per year of different types of frankincense, an aromatic resin used in incense, perfumes, and essential oils, obtained from boswellia trees. Medicinal properties of frankincense include anti-inflammatory and anti-tumor properties. Cape Verde, where Alula is located, was at one time considered the center of the world's spice trade and known as Aromata, or the Cape of Spice, due to the abundance of spices it produced, including frankincense, cinnamon, and Indian spices. Tunisia and the coast of North Africa is the southern boundary of the Mediterranean Sea. If you break down the meaning of Mediterranean Sea, you come up with Middle Earth Sea. Interestingly, the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, the northern border of which is on the Mediterranean Sea, has been calculated to be the center of the landmass of the Earth. Karl Monk in the Code deciphers a shared mathematical code related to the pyramids of Giza and the dimensions of the architecture of sacred sites all over the Earth, one which encodes longitude and latitude of each that cross-reference other sites. He shows that this pyramid code is clearly sophisticated and intentional, and perfectly aligned geometrically over long distances. The Great Pyramid was the prime meridian of the Earth until the prime meridian was moved to the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, England, in 1851. Next, it is interesting to note that approximately 200 miles, or 323 kilometers, almost due south of Susa, is the town of Tatawan, in the governorate of Tatawan. The word the town and region is named for was said to have meant springs. The region is known for its underground dwellings of the Berber inhabitants. Tatawan in Tunisia was the inspiration for the desert planet of Tatooine in Star Wars and was a filming location for Tatooine in the movie. Out of curiosity, since there seems to be quite a bit of disclosure happening in Hollywood movies, I looked up how Tatooine in Star Wars became a desert planet. So as related in the history of Star Wars, once upon a time, Tatooine was a thriving world with twin suns, where its advanced people lived peacefully in gleaming cities alongside blue seas, but it was invaded by the Rakatan Infinite Empire, who enslaved the inhabitants. Though Tatooine's inhabitants were able to eventually drive the Rakata off their world after a virulent plague weakened the invaders, the Rakata retaliated with an orbital bombardment that glassed the surface of the planet and boiled off its oceans, with the glass becoming sand in time. Let's see what else we find in this part of the world. Next on the alignment in Tunisia from Susa, we come to Kairouan, the capital of the Kairouan Governorate and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Great Mosque of Kairouan, also known as the Holy Mosque of Uqba, is considered to be one of the most impressive and largest Islamic monuments in North Africa. It is one of the oldest places of worship in the Islamic world, said to have been established in 670 AD, and the model for all later mosques in the Maghreb. The architectural style of the Great Mosque of Kairouan in Tunisia is like that of the Alhambra in Spain, the only location in our historical narrative where a significant Moorish history is openly acknowledged. Both places share features like courtyards with multiple archways and double columns. We are told that during the Aghlabid dynasty between 800 AD and 909 AD, the ruler of Ifriqiya in today's North Africa established a university in Kairouan as part of the Great Mosque complex, and that it became a center of education in both Islamic thought and in the secular sciences. It is said to be in the Guinness Book of World Records as the oldest currently functional university in the world. The Aghlabids were said to have built palaces, fortifications, and fine waterworks, of which only the pools remain. For example, these are called the Aghlabid basins, said to have been built in the 9th century as water storage for the Aghlabid Palace, which was on the site of a present-day cemetery. Jebel Chambi is the next placed on the alignment, the highest mountain in the country, standing above the city of Kasserine in western central Tunisia. With new eyes as of the last year, I now considered the possibility that this was the location of a giant tree. The summit is covered by a pine forest and is part of the Chambi National Park. Both Kairouan and Kasserine were located on the railway line in this direction from Susa. In On the Trail of Giants in Appalachia and Beyond, Theme 3, The Energy Grid, I documented findings supporting the idea that suspected giant tree locations were serving as things like transportation hubs on the Earth's energy grid system for past and present railroad lines, most of which have been replaced by highway routes or recreational trails in today's world. Interestingly, the Battle of Kasserine Pass took place during the Tunisia campaign of World War II. It was the first major engagement between American and Axis forces in Africa. With the Axis German and Italian forces led by Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, it was an early defeat for Allied forces. One of the things that happened during the Battle of Kasserine Pass was the destruction of a railroad bridge by American troops at Valletta. Interesting that there are so many military engagements historically that have taken place along these alignments I have been tracking. The Napoleonic Wars, World War I, World War II, among other kinds of wars. It makes me wonder what they were really all about. Like maybe damage to, and in many cases, the complete destruction of the ancient advanced Moorish civilization and the Earth's energy grid system. The even more giant tree stump-looking Jugurtha tableland is in Tunisia. The location of the Jugurtha tableland is northwest of Kasserine, near Hadra, where, as previously mentioned, we are told the railroad was brought in there for lead, phosphate, and ore mining, activities also associated with the suspected locations of giant trees. Hadra was also the location of what was said to be one of the earliest Roman settlements in North Africa. The next place we come to on the alignment is El Oued, the capital of Algeria's El Oued province in the Sahara Desert in northeast Algeria. The oasis town of El Oued is watered by an underground river, which allows for date palm cultivation. It is also known as the City of 1,000 Domes, since most roofs are domed. In El Oued province itself, we find the Chat Melrir, an endorheic salt lake, which is a limited drainage basin with no outflow, and the westernmost of a series of depressions from the Gulf of Gabes in the Mediterranean Sea into the Sahara. The Grand Erg Oriental, or Great Eastern Sand Sea, is in the southern part of the province, and is a field of sand dunes. The Grand Erg Oriental used to be associated with the Wadi Egargar, described as a dry and mostly buried river with a sizable number of tributaries, a canal system perhaps, that flowed north into the Erg from the Hagar Mountains to the south of it. At one time, not only did the Sahara Desert have a fertile savanna-type ecosystem supporting a wide and varied wildlife population, like these life-sized giraffes carved in rock in the Sahara. The region now called the Sahara Desert had great forests, including but not limited to oak, elm, alder, juniper, and pine. As you can see in this picture, we are taught the desertification of this region started happening a long time ago. Maybe, maybe not. There is so much we have not been told about. The silence about the history of this region of the world in the present day is deafening. This is a good place to bring up desertification of certain places around the world, like the Sahara Desert. I mean, is all of this the result of natural processes over time? Or did something happen to cause it all of a sudden that we haven't been told about? Next on the alignment, from El Oued, we come to the city of Touggourt, the capital of Algeria's Touggourt province, and a former sultanate. The sultanate was abolished by French colonial authorities in Algeria in 1854, and after about a 50-year period of time, it became an autonomous administrative district in what was called the Southern Territories of Algeria. Touggourt is situated next to an extensive system of oases which supports palm plantations and other agriculture in a 31-mile or 50-kilometer north-to-south area. Here is a close-up of a place with some kind of agriculture, and where you can see what appears to be, what used to be, infrastructure in the surrounding desert. The next place on the alignment is Gardaia, the capital of Algeria's Gardaia province. It lies along the west bank of the Wadi Mazab, described as a dry riverbed. I couldn't find a picture of the mostly underground Wadi Agargar back in the Grand Erg Oriental, but it is not hard to find pictures of the Wadi Mazab showing masonry banks. The Wadi Mazab Valley in Gardaia province has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1982. The cities of the Wadi Mazab Valley are 7 in number, with 5 built close together and 2 lying further out. Gardaia is upstream of the other 4 cities that form what is called the Pentapole and is the commercial capital of the Mazab, with its dominating mosque. Then next downstream comes Malika, with its unique-looking chic city Aissa cemetery. Next we come to Beni Isgouin, the most traditional city of the Mazab Valley, and in which any visitor must be accompanied by an authorized guide or member of the community. Next we come to Benora, meaning the luminous, and El Atouf, which means the turn. And all 5 are close together on the S-shaped river bends of the Wadi Mazab. The other 2 cities that constitute the 7 cities are Berrien, located on National Road 1, one of the country's important highways, and El Guerara on the passageway for caravans crossing the Sahara from east to west and north to south, and are located further out from the other 5. Taking a look at the Pleiades, I think the 7 cities of the UNESCO World Heritage Site of the Wadi Mazab Valley could possibly be a terrestrial star map of the Pleiades, also known as the 7 Sisters. Before I leave Algeria and head into Mauritania, there is one more place I would like to bring to your attention. You can easily find this information if you look for it, as it is not hidden from us like so much else, but most people don't know about it. While Regane is not directly on the alignment I am tracking, it is relatively close to it. Regane is the capital of Algeria's Adrar province. France began its nuclear testing program in Regane between 1960 to 1961, before Algeria's independence. They conducted 4 atmospheric nuclear tests which contaminated the Sahara Desert with plutonium, negatively impacting those who live there to this day. Not only Regane, but far beyond. Between 1960 and 1966, a total of 17 nuclear tests were conducted in the Regane district of Algeria. It was called Africa's Hiroshima. The next place I'm going to highlight on the alignment is the Eye of the Sahara, which is near Ouadane in central Mauritania. It is visible from space and has been used by NASA astronauts as a visual landmark. The Eye of the Sahara, also known as the Richat structure, is described as a geological formation in the Sahara Desert that resembles an enormous bullseye. It is highly symmetrical and measures 25 miles or 40 kilometers in diameter. 3 nested rings dip outwards from the center of the structure and are all equidistant from the center. Some have speculated that this configuration matches that of Atlantis as described by Plato. If it is a man-made structure and not natural as many want us to believe, why does it look melted? It resembles Lop Nur, an ancient salt lake in the Taklamakan Desert in the southeastern portion of the Uyghur Autonomous Region in Xinjiang in China, and the location where the Chinese nuclear weapons test base had 4 nuclear testing zones starting in 1959, with H-bomb detonation in 1967 until 1996, with 45 nuclear tests conducted. Next we come to Nouakchott, the capital and largest city of Mauritania. It is one of the largest cities of the Sahel, the ecoclimatic and biogeographic zone of transition in Africa between the Sahara to the north and the Sudanian savanna to the south. We are told that Nouakchott was a large, fortified, fishing village in pre-colonial times and under French rule. Now, why would a fishing village be fortified? I'm unable to find any historic photos of Nouakchott on the internet to see what it might have looked like even around the early 1900s. I did find this illustration of the skyline of Nouakchott, and this Mauritanian banknote depicting some of the country's infrastructure. Then I look at the absolutely devastated looking desert landscape of the whole country from Google Earth, and it makes me wonder about what we are really looking at here. So I delved into the history of Mauritania to see what I could find out about what we are told in the historical record we have been given. We are told that Mauretania was the Latin name for a region in the ancient Maghreb. It stretched from central present-day Algeria westward to the Atlantic, covering northern Morocco, and southward to the Atlas Mountains, and included the cities of Ceuta and Melilla, which are autonomous cities of Spain in North Africa. Ceuta lies on the Strait of Gibraltar, the boundary between the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, and is the location of Jebel Musa, or Mount Moses, considered by some to be the southern pillar of Hercules, and the Rock of Gibraltar across the Strait of Gibraltar, considered to be the northern pillar of Hercules. And could they have possibly been former giant trees as well? Gibraltar is a British overseas territory in southern Spain. Interesting that both Ceuta and Gibraltar are governed by countries outside of the one in which they are physically located. The largely intact royal walls of Ceuta are described as a line of fortifications said to have been built by the Portuguese in the 1540s. Melilla, the other autonomous city of Spain in North Africa along with Ceuta, said to mean the white one, has the fortress walls of Old Melilla, said to have been built in the 16th and 17th centuries after the Spanish conquest of the region in 1496. Nevertheless, we are told that the native inhabitants of Mauritania were semi-nomadic pastoralists of Berber ancestry and known to the Romans as Mauri, or Moors. Berbers are called an ethnic group of several nations mostly indigenous to Mauritania, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Libya, northern Mali, northern Niger, and a small part of western Egypt. Both Ceuta and Melilla are officially claimed by Morocco. The term Barbary Coast and Barbaria was said to have been used by Europeans from the 16th century to the early 19th century to refer to the regions of North Africa inhabited by the Berbers. We are taught that the kings of Mauritania became Roman vassals in 27 BC, and that in 44 AD, Mauritania was annexed to Rome as two different provinces, Mauritania Tingitana, or present-day northern Morocco, and Mauritania Caesariensis, or present-day northern Algeria. Then during the crisis of the 3rd century, a period of time when the Roman Empire almost collapsed between 235 and 284 AD, we are told, because of invasions and overall instability within the empire, that parts of Mauritania were reconquered by Berber tribes and Romano-Moorish kingdoms were established during the 6th and 7th centuries. Fast forward through time to the Barbary Wars, which were a series of conflicts culminating in two main wars fought between the United States, Sweden, and the Barbary states of the Ottoman Empire in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. We are told that Barbary pirates demanded tribute from American vessels in the Mediterranean Sea, and in 1801 President Thomas Jefferson refused to pay, and sent a U.S. naval fleet to the Mediterranean in May of that year, and which lasted until 1805. The naval fleet commenced bombarding various fortified pirate cities in present-day Libya, Tunisia, and Algeria over the next 3 years until concessions of fair passage were extracted from their rulers, which were most likely the days of Tripoli, Tunis, and Algiers in the First Barbary War. The Second Barbary War took place in 1815 between the United States and the Barbary States, and we are told, brought to an end the American practice of paying tribute to the pirate states and marked the beginning of the end of piracy in the region. I am including what information is available about the Barbary Wars because it is noteworthy. I would love to know what was really going on here with regards to the Barbary Moors, because that information is difficult to find if it even exists. Mauritania was administered as a French colony during the first half of the 20th century, achieving independence in 1960, and Nouakchott becoming its capital in 1958, at which time it was described as being a mid-sized village of little importance. By the way, an interesting side note is the RMS Mauretania, a passenger ocean liner launched on September 20th of 1906 and was said to have been named for the ancient Roman province of Mauretania and not the modern country, and was the sister ship to the RMS Lusitania, named for the Roman province directly to the north of Mauretania across the Strait of Gibraltar, which is famous in history for having been sunk by a German U-boat in 1915 off the coast of Ireland. The iron ore trains of Mauretania are some of the longest, if not the longest, in the world, at 1.6 miles or 2.5 kilometers long. Hauling iron ore, people, and goods 405 miles or 652 kilometers between the mining town of Zouarat on the west side of Kejed Edjil, the highest peak in Mauretania, through the Sahara Desert, to the port city of Nouadhibou on Mauretania's coast. Attar is situated in the upper corner of the eyelid of the Eye of the Sahara, and is 213 miles or 343 kilometers south of Zouarat and Kejed Edjil, and Chinguetti is located on the lower lid of the eye, to the southeast of Attar. The Adrar Plateau Mountains stretch east to west between Attar and Chinguetti. This is a view on the top left in the Imajgar Pass between Attar and Chinguetti in Mauretania, compared with similar looking features at Thule in Greenland on the top right, Cutimbo in Peru on the bottom left, and in the village of Oak Creek in Sedona, Arizona on the bottom right. Again, have to wonder if we are looking at former giant tree locations at all these places being mentioned here. Chinguetti is called the Holy City of the Sahara and venerated as one of the most holy cities of Islam, and has some of the world's oldest surviving copies of Qurans and other documents. Then there's Wadani, situated pretty darn close to the eyeball of the Eye of the Sahara, and what was once one of Africa's key trading posts, and a UNESCO World Heritage Site today. It is largely in ruins, though there is a settlement of people still living there outside the gates. I noticed the Banc d'Arguin National Park on the coast, another UNESCO World Heritage Site located north of Nouakchott, and went there to take a look, as I consistently find that for as much of the ancient civilization as is destroyed, neglected, or incorporated in unprotected places, much is preserved intact in parks. The island of Arguin in the Bay of Arguin was the first thing I noticed when I looked at Google Earth. The interesting thing about Arguin, part of the national park, is that while there is not much going on there now, at one time there was a lot going on there, including a star fort, said to have been built by the Dutch, which doesn't appear to exist anymore. We are told that starting in 1443, it became a part of the Portuguese Empire, and at different times over the centuries it was part of the Dutch Empire, part of the territories and provinces of Prussia, and part of the French Overseas Empire. The shallows of the Banc d'Arguin National Park are said to be remnants of a vast river delta from a time when waters flowed from what is now the Sahara Desert. And the Banc d'Arguin is a major breeding site for migratory birds, and its surrounding waters are some of the richest fishing waters in Western Africa, serving as nesting grounds for the region. From Nouakchott, the next place we come to on the alignment are the Cape Verde Islands. The island republic of Cape Verde is 350 miles or 570 kilometers off the coast of Western Africa and consists of 10 islands divided into two groups. One group is called the Barlavento or Windward Islands of Sando Antão, São Vicente, Santa Lucia, São Nicolau, Sal, and Boa Vista. The other group is called the Sotavento or Leeward Islands of Santiago, Maio, Fogo, and Brava. They are part of what is called Macaronesia, a collection of 4 archipelagos in the North Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Africa and Europe, also including the Canary Islands, Madeira, and the Azores. Santiago is the country's largest island, and where its capital, Praia, is located. We are told that the islands were uninhabited before the arrival of Portuguese and Genoese navigators in 1456, with Portuguese settlers arriving in 1462 and founding a settlement called Ribeira Grande, now called Cidade Velha, the historic center of which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. These are what appear to be the very old stone ruins of what is called Se Cathedral in Cidade Velha. There is also an intact star fort in Cidade Velha called the Fort Real de São Felipe, said to have been built by the Portuguese between 1587 and 1593, and part of a system of defense for the city, which included 6 smaller forts on the coast and a wall along the port that apparently no longer exists. Moving over to look at Praia, the capital city, I see the familiar shape of the harbor there, compared, for example, to the harbor back in Sousse, Tunisia, on the other side of Africa. The red dots mark where lighthouses are located, and I typically find pairs of lighthouses at harbor entrances around the world. Like those back at Susa, the Farol de Dona Maria Pia is a lighthouse at the southernmost point of the island of Santiago, at the entrance of Praia Harbor. Based on what I have found at other locations with a similar harbor configuration, I would expect to find a lighthouse at the head of the opposite jetty, but there isn't one. It looks like something is standing there, but not a lighthouse, and I could find no record of one being there. Lastly, it is interesting to note that the Cape Verde Islands are specifically mentioned in the Intercetera Bull, issued by Pope Alexander VI on May 4th of 1493. This papal bull essentially authorized a land grab of the lands of the Moorish civilization in the Americas, and became a major document in the development of subsequent legal doctrines regarding claims of empire in the New World. The bull assigned to Castile the exclusive right to acquire territory, to trade in, or even approach the lands lying west of the meridian, situated 100 leagues west of the Azores and Cape Verde Islands, except for any lands actually possessed by any other Christian prince beyond this meridian prior to Christmas of 1492. In the historical narrative we have been given, this papal bull was issued a year after the fall of Granada on January 2nd of 1492, effectively ending Moorish rule in Spain when Muhammad XII surrendered. It is important to note that the 1452 Dum Diversas papal bull of Pope Nicholas V granted the Crown of Portugal full and free permission to invade, search out, capture, and subjugate unbelievers and enemies of Christ wherever they may be, and to reduce their persons into perpetual slavery. And his 1455 Romanus Pontifex papal bull was a follow-up to the Dum Diversas, confirming the Crown of Portugal's dominion over all lands discovered or conquered during the Age of Discovery, encouraging the seizure of the lands of the Saracens, pagans, and other enemies of Christ, and repeated the earlier bull's permission for the enslavement of such peoples. While it is important to mention that Saracen was a term for Muslims widely used in Europe, it is also the name given to giant megalithic standing stones in Great Britain and other places called Sarsen, shortened from Saracen stones. These 3 papal bulls, the Dum Diversas, Romanus Pontifex, and Intercetera, were to become major documents in the development of subsequent legal doctrines regarding claims of empire in the New World. As an example of this, they were cited in the matter of the lands claimed after the Lewis and Clark expedition, also known to history as the Corps of Discovery, which took place between 1804 and 1806. In our historical narrative, after the Corps of Discovery arrived back in St. Louis on September 23rd of 1806, we are told their visit to the Pacific Northwest, the maps they made, and proclamations of sovereignty with medals and flags given to the indigenous people along the way, were legal steps needed to claim title to each indigenous nation's lands under the doctrine of discovery, a concept of public international law expounded by the United States Supreme Court in a series of decisions in 1823. Under it, title to lands lay with the government whose subjects traveled to and occupied a territory whose inhabitants were not subjects of a European Christian monarch. In other words, the Supreme Court ruled that the Native Americans legally lost claim to their own land under the doctrine of discovery. Chief Justice John Marshall explained and applied the way that colonial powers laid claim to lands belonging to foreign sovereign nations during the Age of Discovery, and Chief Justice noted, among other things, the 1455 Papal Bull Romanus Pontifex and the 1493 Intercetera Bull on the court's decisions to implement the doctrine of discovery. European colonialism intentionally created divides over the landmass of the earth, creating new countries from lands that were taken, as well as creating divisions and discords between peoples that originally existed in harmony worldwide. This particular journey across North Africa to the Cape Verde Islands diagrams ways in which European colonizers consolidated power and control over the landmass of the earth, and raises a lot of questions about the nature of what exactly caused the devastation and desertification throughout this region. I, for one, do not believe it was caused by natural processes over long periods of time as we are taught to believe. I believe that Earth's people and grid system were deliberately hijacked by dark beings with a negative agenda who don't want us to wake up to our true history and who we really are, and have worked very hard to keep this from happening. I also believe that the destruction of the Earth's surface was deliberately caused, and that the original ancient advanced Moorish civilization was wiped out, erased from our collective memory, and that a new historical narrative was created based on the underpinnings of the original civilization, but original meanings and intents were twisted and subverted in order to create a control system for humanity. One more thought before I end this video. I absolutely believe they are not going to get away with what they've done to Earth and to us, and that we have a much better future than what was planned for us. They have lost control of the narrative, no matter how hard they try to get it back. And remember, no matter how things look on the surface, it's always the darkest before the dawn.